Rabbi Dr. Andrew Strauss. Welcome to the Growth Oriented Podcast.
Okay. Don't give people the idea I'm some kind of rabbi, because maybe I have the a little certificate on my wall, but it doesn't mean anything.
Okay. That's your words, not mine. I'm really excited to have you on. I want to start. The reason I really want to have you on this episode, for those who are listening, Rabbi Dr. Andrew Strauss and I are very good friends. We spend time with each other on Shabbos. So our families are very close. And something that's always stood out to me about you is your you lead a very interesting life, a very busy life,
Yeah, that's right.
and at this and you're very passionate about what you do. It's a very meaningful work to you. At the same time, while dedicating all this to, time and energy, um, to your business success, in your practice, you also spend a lot of time in religious growth, at least what I think. From, in terms of the other people who I've seen who are probably as busy, or if not, or not even as busy as you, myself included, it definitely is, making time for davening and learning definitely becomes a struggle. First thing, what really stood out to me is your um, discipline when it comes to meditation. What is meditation for you? What does it do for you? What is your method? What does meditation mean to you?
So I think you have to understand that I've been doing this for a very long time. Like interestingly, I started meditating when I was 15 years old. I think my mother
Wow.
was just so sick of my bad attitude. She thought maybe it would straighten me out. So she took me to these ladies. I remember them in Florida, and they taught me how to meditate, and I really caught on. I have never stopped since then. I've done various different types of meditation. It goes back all the way to being 15 years old, and I have to give credit to my late mother for pushing me to do it, because I'm sure at the time I thought this is just strangeness. And yeah, I meditate every day. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I meditate for an hour every morning, and it's very addictive in a strange way. I really value it. And the days that I don't do it, like for example, yesterday, today, because of slichas, because of the davening is so early, I didn't do it, and I genuinely miss it. It's not like I feel bad, but I miss it. It's not addictive in the sense that I feel ill if I don't do it, but I really enjoy it, and it's a very important part of my day. Absolutely.
Right. I think it's important to mention that I guess, yeah, you are a Baal Tshuva, meaning you did not grow up religious. What role did meditation play for you then, and how has it changed over the course of your, I guess, religious growth?
So yeah, I did not go back to Yiddishkeit until maybe 30 years ago. So after I got bar mitzvah, I really rejected the entire thing. Then when I was about 18 or 19 years old, I decided to go to yeshiva. I felt like I wasn't born a Jew by accident. I owe it to myself and my ancestors, so to speak, to check it out. So I had a roommate from university that was in a yeshiva in Jerusalem, and I contacted him, and I went there, and I spent 4 months there. It was not a good experience, though, I have to say.
Why
I
so?
had
What
no
happened?
Well, you have to imagine, like, I was at the level of Aleph base, and
Right.
I came to the yeshiva, and they said to me, "No problem, just sit over there." And they put me in a shiur, and we were learning Gemara Gittin, and I had no idea what it was about or what was going on. And I remember every day the rabbi would give a shiur, and I felt like the whole thing was just like so far over my head. I had no way to latch on to what he was talking about. And I mean, some of it was nice. The camaraderie was nice. The rabbis were very nice. They were hosting me at their homes, and people were very nice to me. It was a fun experience from that point of view. But honestly, I didn't get too much out of it. And then I was in the middle of chiropractic college at that time, and my father came over to Israel on a UJA mission, and he came to the yeshiva, and he went into the rabbi's office, the Rosh Yeshiva's office, and they called me in a few minutes later, and they said, "You're going back to chiropractic school." And I felt very betrayed, actually, because I thought, like, well, what's going on? But I was very respectful of my father, and if my father said this is what I should do, I didn't question it. I just said, okay, he said, look, if you still want to go back afterwards, but I want you to finish your education. And honestly, I saw value in that. So I got back on the plane, and I remember arriving at JFK thinking to myself, I don't know how to keep Shabbos. I don't know how to keep kosher. I can barely read Hebrew still. It's like I had a backpack full of Sfarim. I felt like, you know what? You gave it a good shot. It didn't work for you. Okay. Yeah, I made peace with it. And I again abandoned Yiddishkeit. And it wasn't until my son was about 10 years old and I was homeschooling him. I was living in Australia on a farm, and I knew I knew that there was a Jewish school in the city. My son woke up one day, he says, I had a dream where I went back to school. So I was very relieved actually, because homeschool is a hard job. I wanted him to go back to school. And we tried a couple of different schools and they didn't work out for him. So like I said, I knew there was a Jewish school in the city. I took him down there. It was a small community. So the way this school was viable was about maybe 40% of the kids were not Jewish, but it was a school that specializes in gifted and talented children. So I took him down there, and just because of the nature of the school, they assessed him. Mr. Southern, I remember, was his name. He was a gifted and talented teacher. And they had me sitting in the hallway outside. My son went in. He was in there for 45 minutes and he comes out. Mr. Southern calls me in the room and he says to me, your son's a genius. And I was like, I don't think so. I just homeschooled him for 2 years. He's no genius. He says, no, he is. I said, well, how can you say that? Upon what basis would you make such a statement? I thought that was like very extreme. Like, what kind of questions were you asking him? He says, well, you see how I was in here for 45 minutes with him? I want to tell you that most of the time I'm in here for 15 minutes and then I'm at the end of that particular child. But you can see I was in here 3 times that amount of time with your son. What kind of questions? And I remember one particular question he told me. And imagine that he's speaking to a 10-year-old kid. He says to him, how is it possible that a person could go to 2 different doctors with the same problem and get 2 different diagnoses? I was like, that's a pretty interesting question for a 10-year-old. So I was very impressed by this. I left the farm. I rented a house in the city near the shul and the school. And I never went back to the farm after that. I stayed in that city and I got involved with the synagogue. Just by the nature of who I am, I was on the board of the synagogue and I was going there every Shabbos. But it's interesting, in Australia, at least where I was, there's really only an Orthodox shul. There was a very small Reform shul, but it was very, like, a very Reform shul. Everybody belongs to the Orthodox shul. They drive there. They don't necessarily they don't keep Shabbos. They don't keep kosher in their homes, at least. They're happy to eat kosher, but they all identify as being Orthodox. So I got involved with that shul and I got more and more interested. And then I decided I want to try to keep Shabbos.
What
So
made you decide to start keeping Shabbos?
just as an experiment, I just want to see what that would be like. Nobody else was doing it except for the rabbi, of course, maybe 1 or 2 other families. But one of the families actually that kept Shabbos, my accountant, he invited me to his home for dinner that night. And I went to the home, and I remember coming back to my house afterwards because I lived in a gated community and the gates were closed. Something like,
Interesting.
how am I going to get back into
Right.
my house? And I thought, well, I'll wait for a car to come in and I'll walk behind the car. But no cars came. It was, it was pretty late.
Oh my gosh.
So I climbed over the wall. I remember that. So I could
That's
keep
awesome.
Shabbos.
That's commitment, man.
Yeah. And then after that, it was Pesach, and the rabbi said, I'm going to send some bacharim to your house. They're going to kosher your kitchen for Pesach. And I remember I was talking to these boys, these yeshiva boys from Melbourne, about my meditation and Kabbalah. They were absolutely not interested at all. They just thought it was very
Did
weird.
you think they would be more I feel like they would have been more interested. That's what I would have expected.
Yeah, I thought that, they would be, but they felt like it was, they were there for a job and that's what they were doing. And then they were going to leave.
They're
They
very
weren't interested
focused.
in getting involved in my shtus.
They're focused on the task at hand.
But after that, I kept the house kosher. I wasn't really eating any dairy. So I had like paper plates and plastic for dairy, and the whole house was fleshik and parv, I guess. And that's how I started keeping kosher. So I kept Shabbos, I started keeping kosher. And then I realized if I wanted to keep learning, I had to leave that city. So I retired. I remember I had a meeting with an insurance salesman, thinking that I was going to buy life insurance. And after he evaluated me, he said to me, in good faith, I can't really sell you insurance. You don't need it. You're financially stable. You don't need insurance. And that was a really like a wake up call to me. So I looked at my finances and I realized that I didn't need to work. I had enough money saved, and I still had the practice. So I hired another doctor to work the practice. So I still had some income, and I had some rental properties that I was getting income off of. And I packed up, moved to Melbourne, and I showed up at the Lubavitch Kollel. And I said to the guy there, I remember Chaim Svigroner, he was like the head of the Kollel. I said to him, I want to come and learn. And he, asked me about my background. He says, "Look, it's really nice that you want to do that, but this is like graduate school, and you're still like
Right.
in primary school. This is not the place for you." He said, "But look, we have in the evenings we have public shirim. You're very welcome to come to any of that kind of thing." And I said to him, "Would you mind if I just sit here?" Because I saw they had English books as part of the library. So I sat down there, and the rabbis, that were learning there, they were very amused by me. And one of them came over and he said, "Look, on Fridays from 8 till 9 in the morning, I'm free. I could learn with you." And by the end of the day, I had a schedule from 8 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. Each rabbi was taking me on one at a time. And I stayed there for a year. And I just learned every day at this place, this kollel, and I had like the elder Hussid, who was Herschel Goldman. He was like very good to me because I didn't know anything. I didn't know like what do you wear, where are you supposed to go, what are you supposed to
Right.
do, what book should you bring with you. I
So
knew
you had
nothing.
all this free time because you decided to, I guess, not work because you saw in your finances that you were pretty well off. You had the flexibility and the ability. Was there a part of you that really wanted to work a lot? I mean, you said you continued your practice, but was there a part of you that really wanted to continue and maybe sacrifice time learning in order to continue and incur more wealth?
Well, what I did do is I had a friend in Melbourne who was a chiropractor, so I used to fill in for him when he went on vacation.
Hmm.
And my practice, when the doctor that was working for me wanted to take time off, I would fly back to Adelaide and work while he was on vacation. But other than that, no, I was very at peace with the whole thing. I really didn't feel like I needed to work. And it wasn't until I came back to America, I got remarried. I moved back to New York. That's when I really fired things back up again. And that was when the practice really became a huge focus and became very successful. And it's like it was a second stage for me.
What motivated you to reprioritize your time after? Because you could have just continued, just find a local kollel wherever you were in New York, and what changed?
So I really believe that I needed to get married and have more family. I have one son from my previous marriage, but I felt like I needed to get married. I needed to have a family. I needed to have more kids. It was like very apparent to me that this was my next step. And I married a great lady from Johannesburg, and she really wanted to go back to America. She had gone to university in America and she wanted to live in America. And I realized that while I was financially independent for myself and my son, I wouldn't be financially independent for having a whole nother family, especially moving back to a very expensive place like New York. And I realized I needed to work. And I didn't really, honestly, I didn't really know what to do because when I graduated chiropractic school, I had moved straight to Australia. So I had never practiced in America before,
Right.
but I had a consultant. I think this is a very important, it was very important for me. It's this Dr. Pete Fernandez, and he really helped me when I was first in practice. I was successful from day one. I remember my first day that they opened the office, I had 11 new patients and I attributed it to him. I was there until like 1 o'clock in the morning processing reports for the next day. I was so thrilled. So when I came back to America, I called him. And this was, 20 years later. I called him and I said, "You remember me, Andrew Strauss from Australia?" "Yeah, of course." He says, "I remember you." I said, I'm back in the United States now and I'm at a loss. I'm not sure how to proceed. So he says to me, "Where are you practicing?" "New York." "Oh," he says, "terrible place." Because his thing was no fault workers' compensation, that kind of a practice, and it doesn't work in New York because New York doesn't pay very much for those kind of things. You go across the border 5 miles into New Jersey, and they're paying literally like 5 times the same amount of money for the same service because of the different laws of the state. So he says to me, "You have to find a niche." I said, "Like what? What do you have in mind?" So he says, maybe migraines, knee problems, neuropathy, scoliosis, concussion. Yeah, he gave me a list of things that he thought were possible. And I was thinking about it, and scoliosis was something that really strikes fear into the heart of the chiropractor because it's very difficult to treat and it's very random. Like sometimes you help people, sometimes you hurt people. There's no consistency with it. So that next week, I'm reading one of my chiropractic journals and I see an ad for a series of conferences in Connecticut. And the person who's leading the conferences is one of my professors from school. So I knew him and I knew he was an honest guy. So I said to my friend John, maybe we'll go up there. We'll check it out. We'll have like a guy's weekend. We'll have some fun together. So he says, yeah, I'm in. So we go up there and I was just completely fascinated by this. In a way, it seemed too good to be true. But I knew I knew the professor who was teaching it. And I went back to the second one and I went back to a third one. I bought some equipment. I had one patient, Yuri, a 55-year-old Russian guy who had scoliosis. And I had one piece of equipment. And he says to me, does anybody else ever use this? He says, because I was here 2 weeks ago and I left the straps on the equipment like this. And I see they're exactly how I left them. I said, no, Yuri, you're it. That was in
Wow.
2002. And now I'm the vice president of the organization. I'm the head teacher. I developed a new curriculum recently. I have the highest level of certification. And my entire practice now is scoliosis. And it's been absolutely amazing.
That's awesome. I had a previous conversation with someone who, when I asked them, how does one find balance? How do you find balance between pursuing what you enjoy or really just working, like finding the time to pursue business success or material success in all its glory versus, or not versus, but while also balancing that with dedicating time to grow yourself spiritually and religiously in any really way, in any way, really. And he said something interesting. I want to hear your thoughts on this. He said that balance is a hard way to kind of frame the whole thing because balance it means like everything is equal, that I dedicate equal amount of time to this and to that, and it doesn't also explain what is the ideal outcome. The a better way of reframing it, he said, is looking at things through prioritization, which is kind of why I asked you why your priorities changed when you moved. Is this idea of true balance and is really just true serenity, and this is a Jewish concept as well, that like as he phrased it, we live in a fragmented world, and the way that we kind of cope with that or move through that is by finding what are our priorities, what are we willing to sacrifice, and if we're willing to sacrifice the right things or the things that we really want, we'll find serenity within that. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to dedicate the same amount of time to my work, to my learning. Most people nowadays can't do that. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that idea, of this idea of it, a better way of framing quote unquote balance in life. Instead of balance, it's really just serenity and like, am I prioritizing the things that I find meaningful?
So I think the key for me is I call it leaning in the right direction. In
Hmm.
other words, like when I got back here, I still felt like I knew nothing, even though I'd spent this year in the kollel and learning. So I enrolled, for example, in a smicha program. And it took me 7 years to get through that program, but I was just chipping away at it. And in the end, I took the test, I passed the test, and it was, very satisfying. So it's like just leaning in the right direction. For example, I have a chavrusa. I just love hanging out with this guy. So it's a lot of pleasure for me to hang out. And we slowly move through material. We've been learning together for years and we've gone through, I don't know, maybe 10 different projects of learning. Right now we're learning Megillas Esther. And it's a wonderful way to learn because we're going into depth of the topic and we're just gradually working through. So there's no real like time pressure on us. We're just working away. And now I'm working actually on the second smicha. I'm working on Shabbos. And believe it or
Awesome.
not, I'm actually 7 years into this one and I'm halfway through. I just hit halfway through last week.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, and I just chip away at it, like just learning a little bit every day. And over time, one thing for me, which has been very important, is to have accountability on the learning. Like for me, I tried, for example, learning chitas, the Lubavitch
For
chitas,
sure. Yeah.
and I felt like it was just like in one ear and out the other. It was like turning a fire hose on. I couldn't really absorb anything. But with the smicha programs, they really work for me because I have to take tests. and I'm held accountable, I'm being evaluated on, did I actually understand? And if I don't pass the test, for example, I just retake it again and again until I get 100% on the test, and I move on to the next thing. But I have that opportunity to be held accountable, and to me, that's very important for me personally. This is how I learn the best.
That's an interesting perspective because in yeshiva, uh, whenever we have like bechinas, oh, sorry, no, not bechinas, rather. The fact that we don't have bechinas all the time in certain yeshivas, bechinas are tests to test your knowledge on the subject matter. It's always like framed as an advantage, like, oh, look at us, like we're not testing you on it because we want you to be learning it lishma for its own sake, right? It's not for anything else. This is really for in high school. Like sometimes we'll learn something and the rabbi will deliberately not test you because they said, "I want you to learn this for the sake of learning it." And some certain yeshivas do it as well. But that's an interesting point of like actually, and I never thought of it this way, but sometimes testing yourself in the subject matter, it's not a way of degrading learning for its own sake. It has nothing to do with that. If anything, it's actually a way of proving to yourself that you actually learn the subject matter. You earn some sort of degree of mastery over the subject. So that's actually a really cool idea. And it actually makes sense for someone like you because you yourself, I think you have a very high emphasis and prioritization of education. How has that education play? Because you have degrees all over your wall in your office. For anyone who knows, what role does education play in your life, other than it's good to know stuff? Is there maybe a deeper drive, a deeper calling, something you personally love about it?
Well, professionally, I feel like it's very important for me because I am taking care of very high risk cases these days, and I really have to feel and be at the top of my game. If somebody brings their 10-year-old child who's got a progressive condition like scoliosis, and I am going to try to avoid surgery with this kid by helping them through that growth process, I've really got to know what I'm talking about. So, that really pushes me to learn. I'm constantly learning new things. Like, for example, I'll just show you this. I just downloaded, this is a PhD thesis that I just downloaded.
That's a thick thesis.
Yeah. And I'm in the process of learning through it. But this material is not even available because this is some guy, it's like a non-published thesis. I got this guy to allow me to have the file, and I sent it to Staples and I printed it out. So I'm going to learn that because that is the latest information on adult degenerative scoliosis. It's like the cutting edge. This guy's a mentor of mine who did his PhD, and I have tremendous respect for him. And I feel I need to know that material. And also, I'm teaching the other doctors these days. So
Mhm.
when I stand up there in front of an audience of people and I'm teaching a subject, people will ask me, they'll hold me accountable. They will, why do you say that? Where'd you get that information from? I have to be able to quote chapter and verse on everything because they're holding me accountable. And I appreciate that. So that's another way that I hold myself accountable, is by taking care of these high risk cases and by lecturing to my profession.
Yeah, it goes back to that theme of accountability. The same thing, when it comes to just your own learning. And I think most people it would work the same. I think when it's like people have that idea with a level of accountability just through a learning partner with a chavrusa. That I know that if I don't hop on that phone call, if I don't go to the shul or the base medrash to learn with my chavrusa at 9 a.m. every morning or 8:30 a.m. in the morning, he's waiting for me and he's relying on me. And for you, it's like your patients are relying on you. I think about that when it comes to Torah learning of my children rely on me. So I personally, more recently, it's easier maybe for me to push myself to learn because now that I have a son and I'm focusing on, building my family, it's becoming more apparent to me that there's so little that I know about very basic things in Judaism. And, that could be attributed to all sorts of things. But I think for anyone at any stage in life or any sect or any place within the Jewish community, I think that there's always more to learn. And, some of it you can say it's for my own sake, and maybe it should be, right? We should maybe be learning Torah for our own sake, but also it goes back to accountability. So I think, for those who are listening, that might be a good frame or a good anchor for you or for anyone working through this is like, what are ways that I can look beyond myself? Jordan Peterson talks about this and there are, hundreds of, maybe if not thousands of studies that show that people take more care for others than they do themselves. That people are more inclined to do more for others than they are for themselves, and they're also more empathetic to others than they are for themselves. So that's interesting. I want to shift gears for 1 second along the same kind of conversation. Talking about time for learning and learning for your business and learning for Torah. So I guess for me, sometimes when I have a free moment, I can either listen to an audiobook or read a book or listen to a podcast that will push me closer to my business goals. Maybe it could be some strategies on marketing. It could be just general business, ideas or, a book on AI that I'm reading, things like that. Or I could spend time learning Torah and learning for, myself and to broaden my understanding of Torah and to come closer to Hashem, which is ultimately the goal. What is your take on do you break up time for both? Do you have dedicated time for both? Whenever you're faced with maybe an empty moment, what would you choose first?
So I actually have a very interesting strategy for this,
Okay.
and that is that I read many things at the same time. It's very
I can't do
strategic. I don't know how I don't know how I work this out, but it really works for me. And I remember I was talking to a bacher about it one day, and he said to me, "Oh, that's the strategy of, Rav so and so." So I mean, I fully get it. It's not like I'm the only one, but I have usually like maybe 9 or 10 books that I'm reading at the same time. And I
Mhm.
find when I do that, I can read like for hours, because once I'm done with one, I just put it down and pick up the next one, and I get tired of that one. Put it, and sometimes I only read a few pages in each book, and it takes a long time to finish the book, so to speak. But in that mix of those 9 books, there'll be secular books. Like maybe I'll have one novel. Although I have to admit, it gets confusing with a novel because you have to keep a track of all the characters.
Right.
It's
And you
like
start mixing them in between different novels. How many novels can you read at once?
no novel. I only read one at a
Yeah,
time.
you can't. Yeah,
But
makes
but
sense.
even then, that it gets a little confusing because you have to remember who's who.
Right.
But as a practical consideration, but then I'll have professional stuff I'm reading, like for example that PhD thesis. You can't just read that; it's very dense. So
Right.
you can only really stand to read a few pages at a time because it's very very dense stuff. And then I'll pick up, for example, like I said, I'm learning Megillas Esther, so I'll start. I have 5 different books of commentaries on Megillas Esther, so I'll just roll through them. And then I have books on meditation that I'm reading. And then I have the smicha program that I'm doing. And then I have professional development that I'm doing in other areas. Like I have an online course I'm taking right now. So the idea is that I have many things going and I just go with my interest.
Mhm.
Whatever I'm interested in, that's what I do. And they all seem to get their own fair share of time.
That's cool. That's really interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot of like push to just like, oh, you need to learn it. Like, even if you don't want to learn it, you have to learn it. But what you're saying is true, and it's not even so much of like a just doing what you want thing. It seems to me that it's a very not only practical but very efficient way of actually going about learning each individual thing. So because when you're learning it, you don't need to push yourself necessarily. If you need to push yourself to learn something, the likelihood of you actually, first of all, starting it and also actually spending time doing it and also enjoying it and then actually getting something out of it is much lower because you actually want to enjoy what you're doing. So that's really interesting. But back to that question, if you had 10 minutes out of your day, let's say you finish a meeting early, a client leaves early, you have 10 minutes that you can, let's say that you could learn something. Are you picking up a safer first or are you picking up that thesis first?
Safer, definitely.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Because that's something I can spend 10 minutes on that.
Right.
Whereas if I pick up the thesis, that's something I probably have to spend more time on, and I got to like get into it.
Right.
But to just pick up a safer that I can spend only a few minutes on.
That makes sense. It reminds me of like the all or nothing mindset. I definitely struggle with the all or nothing mindset, particularly when it comes to learning, but I think in other aspects. I think like I won't if I have 5 minutes, I won't learn something. I mean, sometimes I try to and I will, but if I have 5 minutes, I don't take that 5 minutes and learn something because in my mind I'm like, what am I going to learn in 5 minutes? Like, which is obviously not true. There's so much you can do. Even like a few psukim of the weekly Torah portion of your Shnai Mikra is you can for sure accomplish in 5 minutes with commentary, or like a short Dvar Torah, or like those daily learning farm, those like little, those like mini farm that like the little pockets farm that have like 1 page a day type of thing. It's like it's like so easy. Do you feel like so? I guess it seems like the answer is no, but I guess I want to hear your thoughts on that all or nothing mindset. Do you ever struggle with that? And yeah.
So definitely I am not like, for example, don't go on social media. I feel like social media,
Okay.
I was on social media maybe for a while, maybe a year ago. And like one day I just woke up, I was like, this is like such sucking so much of my time. I'm sitting there watching like the stupidest things. Like I'm watching somebody knock somebody out, for example, over and like, like just crazy stuff that gets sucked into this thing with
My
the
entire For You page.
Instagram, whatever. So now I kind of like make a policy. I don't go on social media, but what I do because I have children in Israel is I watch news on WhatsApp. I
Mhm.
have these news feeds on WhatsApp, and that definitely is that takes a lot of my time. Also, I do feel like I need to do it though. I need to understand. I need to know what's going on. So that
Right,
it's not an ideal scenario. Sorry to say.
right. No, no, no. I mean, I think it's honest. I think it's brutally honest, and I think that's there needs to be room for that. I think at the end of the day, I think everyone is kind of focused on being super efficient and maximizing your time, and that's a beautiful, it's a beautiful drive, and it's a noble mission, I think, on an individual level and perhaps even on a societal level. But at the cost of that is remembering that you're only human. And for someone who's hyper efficient, I consider you hyper efficient. I think you're someone who's very disciplined. I want to get into the discipline conversation soon because I have a few questions for you on that. But do you struggle? Giving your time, giving yourself some grace every now and then. Like maybe I guess you know what we can reframe that in like in terms of like when you spend time doing things you enjoy, like doing things for fun and just for you, saying like something you enjoy. I know you're really into your really like cool Lego sets. Not to out you out or anything. I think Lego's awesome and it's cool. It's not nerdy, and anyone can debate me on that anytime.
Yeah,
But also, you have really cool Lego sets.
you can see one of my Legos right there. Right, that's a
Nice,
galloping horse.
yeah. So I'm saying like stuff like that. Like when you're doing that, do you like? I think it's important to while you're doing things that you enjoy. You know, sometimes it's okay to just do things for fun for the sake of it being fun. I want. What do you think about that?
So I try to dovetail a lot of these things together and accomplish more than one thing at a time. Like for example, I have a love of plants. I
Okay,
was
I didn't
actually
know this. Actually, that's interesting.
I was actually a plant scientist before I became a chiropractor. Before I went to chiropractic school, that was my education as a plant scientist.
Okay,
So, like for example, today I'm going to drive to Brooklyn. I'm going to pick up my grandson from school and I'm going to go to the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens. And he loves that too. So I'm a member of the garden. I take him there. I turn him on to the whole plant thing and he loves it there. I'd show him the different textures and the smells and it's a very child friendly place. Interestingly,
of
I
course,
get him a
yeah.
snack, I get him chips or an
It's
ice
the
cream or
best field
something.
trip
It's just
destination.
like a wonderful time for us together. And they have a little shop there. I take them there. Sometimes I buy them a plant and I feel like so I get to do what I love to do and I get to hang out with my grandson. And then after that, I go and have dinner with my son and his family. And it's like a wonderful day out. So I get to dovetail my pleasures with being with the family and hanging out.
I
Yeah.
love that.
So, and even like when I make like my Legos these days, almost always when I do a Lego, I do it with one of my kids.
That's
So
interesting. So it's like it's it because I still think it's okay to do things for fun. Like I think it's okay to sit down and play a game, or yourself, or to sit down and watch a movie that you enjoy. I think if it's like it's different than being on social media for the sake of just scrolling because I don't think it's actually fun in a productive way. I think you should spend time doing things that are fun, but it should be done in a productive way. But what you're also saying is that there's always room, maybe perhaps saying infuse within a fun downtime, things that you consider relaxing that are separate from work and responsibilities and things that you may are a little bit more burdensome, infuse those fun things with meaning. So spending time with family and friends. So when you're going to sit down and watch that movie or go to the botanical garden, you're going to bring someone who you're close with. So I think that's actually pretty beautiful.
it's an interesting idea that comes out of plant science, actually,
Really?
which
Okay,
is,
we're going to talk.
yeah,
Okay, let's do it.
which is that there's this idea called permaculture. And permaculture, the whole principle of permaculture is that each item in the garden, so to speak, performs multiple roles. Right. So like
Okay.
you with every component of the garden, you're achieving multiple ends. Like for example, apple trees get a pest called codling moth. In the larvae of the moth are born in the ground, and then they crawl up the tree and into the tree, and then they go into the fruit. So the way to deal with that is to have chickens that are living in a chicken house next to the apple trees. They go out, so now the chickens eat the larvae, and so they get the nutrition from the larvae, and
Mm,
then grow, and it prevents the tree from getting the disease. So it's like a principle of this type of gardening, so to speak. And I have kind of like used that principle in my life to get multiple benefits out of one thing. In other words, each item has multiple, and I think everybody actually operates like that. It's just being aware that you're doing it so that you, like, for example, I love going to work. I love it. I love helping people, but I also make a living out of it. It
mhm,
also gives me meaning personally in my life. Like that job has multiple benefits in my life. It's not just going to work. It actually has all these flow on benefits. So I think that principle of permaculture can be applied to one's life and also with the learning, for example, like being able to teach. You don't learn just for your sake. I think that's the Pirkei Avos, right? Like we just read that last week, is that the person who's going to get the most benefit is not somebody who just learns, but they learn in order to teach. That's the person
mm.
the most benefit out of their learning, right?
Like you're to be blessed b'chol ma'aseh yadecha is like something we say. Like my father gives me a bracha before Shabbos every week. And, I should be blessed b'chol ma'aseh yadecha. That like everything you do, it's like this idea of like this, the shefa brachos of like, the fruit of your burden, the fruit of your hands actually has multiple outcomes. So that's interesting. Of like, how can you look at what you're already doing and maybe maximize it to a point where it's meaningful, it's exciting, it's fun, and it has multiple outcomes. So, kind of the chicken, kill two birds with one chicken, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
that's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
On that topic of doing what you love, what do you think holds people back from doing what they love? Do you think I mean, obviously, there are certain industries where it's just like you go into that industry, unless you're very passionate about banking or if you're very passionate about accounting or, I think medical is maybe a little bit more easy to be passionate about. I don't know. Like, do you think it's something that you have to make your own business choice for? You have to find the right industry, or like if someone kind of finds themselves in a place where like they're not, they don't hate their job, they're not miserable, but like it's not something they're necessarily passionate about. uh, is there room to do what you love in that regard? What kind of what are your thoughts on the whole do what you love kind of conversation?
I think that it all comes down to facing fear,
Okay.
because I think that fear is where the greatest reward lies. I mean, obviously not jumping off a cliff or something, but like where in the person's life, this to go into the area that they're afraid of is going to give them the biggest reward. And most people are intimidated by that and they back off from it. Like for example, when I went into the scoliosis world, I had to really like take a big risk. I had to buy all this very expensive equipment and I had to dedicate my practice to this. And I really didn't know what was going to be. Thank God it all worked out for me. But I can tell you, I've done other things over the years that didn't work out. Like, for example, I have a master's degree in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. That never really panned out for me, I have to say. I did it, I enjoyed it, but it never really like took off in a big way like the scoliosis has. I was very heavily into nutrition for a long time. It was interesting. I enjoyed it, but it never really took off. But the scoliosis was a big risk for me, financially, emotionally, time-wise, away from the family to do all the study I needed to do in order to get good at it, because there was a big learning curve. I failed a lot in the beginning,
Mhm,
but I just persisted with it. And I really think that to go where the fear lies is the thing that's going to get people to do what they really love and what they really want to do. Because I would say most people have something. There is something that they can hold out there, but for whatever reason, they're not going to do it. They're afraid to do it. They don't want, they can't risk the money. I see this all the time, actually, with doctors that approach me about doing the scoliosis work. They say, yeah, but I got to buy all this equipment, and no, I can't accept that risk. I can't risk my money like that. But look at what the possibility of the return is. Look what you can do, how much you can help people. You can make a good living out of it. But nope, they won't take the risk. So my feeling is Look, be honest with yourself, see where the fear lies, and then move in that direction because that's where the greatest potential lies. That's where your greatest dreams lie. Just that by our nature as human beings, we have a fear of just going and doing it. Like you, for example, you took a risk, right? You
For
took a risk
sure.
to get into this work that you're doing. You know, you could have gone just gotten a job, work for somebody else, not taken that level of responsibility. But for whatever reason, you felt empowered to face that fear and take the risk and do it. And now it's working out for you because you are doing something that you're passionate about.
Right. I mean, I'm also lucky enough to have done it at an age where not only did I have way more flexibility to take risks because I was so young and I had so much time to if it ended up being a mistake, I could have just reverted it and gone back in time and not back in time, but I would have so much more time. I also didn't even appreciate it as a risk, which made it easier for me. But like for me, it was just like I know that this is what I want to do. And I always knew I love creative. I love the creative process, and so for me, it was kind of a no brainer. But I hear what you're saying that oftentimes success lies beyond the wall of fear and risk, and those who are willing to cross over, are obviously the ones who have the higher likelihood. I think it's important also to highlight the fact that there's also a fear associated with not crossing that. There's a fear of what could I have done? So it's kind of like either way, there's going to be something that you're afraid of. If I didn't want to take that risk and surpass surpass that fear, uh, I would have always had a separate fear of like, have I wasted my life? I could have done what I enjoyed. So
Yeah.
take risks.
I think if you, and also if you look objectively at the people who are like the megastars of the successful world, like let's say, for example, Elon Musk, man, that guy is a risk taker.
Yeah,
Wow, like beyond, like to the point where I remember I read the novel, not the novel, the biography of
the
him by
Walter
Levinson.
Isaacson book. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had no money to pay his employees. He
Hmm.
was basically taking money out of his own back pocket to pay his employees. That's how much he believed in the mission. He could have just rolled over and gone bankrupt, but no, he believed it and he took the risk. And, obviously I wouldn't want to live his life, but he's very successful objectively.
I mean, there's also I brought this up with someone in a previous episode of the idea of luck versus emuna. So like I always thought whenever I say, oh, like I trust, I obviously have to do my ishtadlus, but I will trust in God that it'll have the best possible outcome for me, whether I think it's the best or not. And every time I thought of that, I was like, maybe this is a cop out. Like maybe this is just my excuse of not working harder to get the job done. Because if I just attribute it to my success and the outcome to God, maybe and this is me being very vulnerable, by the way. I think this is perhaps a subtle lack in Amuna. I think that everyone has. I always thought it was a cop out, like an excuse. But then I actually read in a different Walter Isaacson biography on Steve Jobs that he was very lucky. Not everything was attributed to successes or hard work. Some things just kind of fell in his lap as a result of, maybe in the non Jewish world as they consider the universe or just luck. The fact that he grew up, his father was very into electronics and mechanics and engineering. If his father wasn't, if he didn't have that figure as a father, we wouldn't have iPods and iPhones and Macs nowadays. Apple wouldn't exist. If he didn't meet the right person in college,
Right.
in this club, or like he went to this like retreat, this apple tree retreat, something like that. I don't have to reread it, but like all
Yeah.
these things. So it's like,
I remember
so,
that also. And he took
yeah,
a class one time like in calligraphy, and that's how he
yes,
developed this great sensitivity for design work.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. But
But it goes to show
there's
you that.
also the idea like of having your cup up, right? Like having you so the bracha is always coming down on us. But if we have our cup upside down, we're not able to. So what you're calling luck, I'm saying no, that person was open. Like that Steve
Mm,
Jobs was open to receiving the blessing. He doesn't
mm.
maybe he doesn't look at it like that. Maybe he looks at also like luck, or he did look at it as luck. I see it as bracha is constantly coming down on us. We say that. We say, Baruch atah Hashem. Like Hashem is the blessing. I really believe that. That's how I say it. Like when I say a bracha, I say it that Hashem is bracha. That's his name. And we just have to be open to that bracha and see it as a bracha.
Shifting gears, seeing godliness in your work, I think, is important. as a Jewish business owner, entrepreneur, if you have your own practice, if you're working, seeing godliness in your work. So that for you, I think there's two components I want to touch. Number one is, we say it every day, "Ma Rabu Masech Hashem." You work in the medical field, in the medical, I guess, world. And within that, I think a very easy way of seeing godliness in that is acknowledging the beauty and the intricacy of science and of the human body. The second thing I want to touch on, seeing godliness in your work is a more general sense. How much do you attribute to God? Do you attribute everything to God? If there are things that you did, how, I guess, how do you see God play a role in your success? So let's start with number one. Um, you know, Kind of like the intricacy and the of science in the human body. I assume did you, I guess, you were already religious when you started your scoliosis practice, or I think you were doing it beforehand.
It's right
So
around the same time.
so did that appreciation grow? Does it continue to grow? Does it, and also does that maybe affect the way that you conduct your practice? Is like the acknowledgement of this beauty of creation?
A little bit. I wouldn't say I don't want to disappoint you, but
No, it's fine.
it's not something that I really have in my mind, to tell you the truth. It's more like I see it a little differently. I see it like I'm a frum guy, and I hold to that in my practice. Like, I wear a kippah, for example, when I go to work. I know a lot of people in this community anyway don't.
Right.
They feel like it's, kippah is not for that world. But I wear a kippah, and I have mezuzahs on all the doors, and my office is closed on the holidays. And, like, it's like I have, for example, a pushka that's bolted to the wall. And when you walk in the door, I have svarim in the reception area. I don't have any magazines in my reception. The only reading material that I have is Jewish material, because these days it's not a big deal anyway. People are on their phones.
Right. It's true.
But when they
You're
but
not
when they
forcing
look at
anyone to read this farm.
yeah, definitely not, definitely not. And it's like it makes an impression on the non-Jewish patients,
Interesting.
much more so
Right.
than the Jewish patients.
Right.
The Jewish patients really just take it as, like, that's this guy's thing. It's like that's his level. That's what he does. They don't really think about it one way or the other. But the Christian, especially like the evangelical Christian patients, they are very respectful of that. They're very interested. They want to ask me for questions, for example. Like the other day, I had a patient, and the father was a minister, and the children all had Jewish names. And the little girl that I was taking care of, her name was Esther.
Wow.
So
There
I
you go.
said to him, Do you know the story of Esther?" And the little girl was so proud. She says, "Yes, I know, I'm a queen." And I said, "Yeah, but did you know what your character, the character Esther, did?" And they were so interested. And the father was so proud for me to be telling his daughter. He was just sitting there smiling, listening to me telling the daughter about the story of Esther. It was beautiful. It was
That's
beautiful.
so
And those
beautiful.
kind of moments happen. And I also, like, I make all the yeshiva boys, when I'm treating them, they have to tell me Dvar Torah. I say, "I'm not going to treat you. If you don't tell me Dvar Torah, don't come."
It might be awkward if they don't have one
It's a half
prepared.
of a joke. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't. But I say, "No, you must know something. You must have learned something this week." And yeah, they'll always be able to pull something out. But I really try to bring that into the practice. And even to the point where, like, my staff, sometimes they get a little bit annoyed, like, "Oh, he's closed again for another Jewish holiday." Or like when I'm lecturing, for example, I say, "You have to slot me in for Friday. I don't do Saturday. I don't work on Saturday. I can't operate the projector or whatever it is, advance the slides." And they joke with me, like, "Can't you just change your religion for a day? We won't tell anybody. What's the big deal?" And that's the standard that most people operate on. It's like you could change. You don't have to be that way all the time. Okay, you're that way most of the
Right.
time. Huh? But
Right.
but here, because they see this certain rigidity that I have with regard to my Yiddishkeit as like a matter of principle, and that
Right.
is a beautiful thing. So that's how I bring Hashem into the practice. Not so much by me being fascinated by, the workings of the human body. I am fascinated by it, but I don't really think of it in those terms. It's
Okay.
much practical, I guess.
And then
How
how do you see God play a role in your success?
I attribute that to my wife.
I hope she's listening. Oh my gosh.
No, I'm only half joking, really, because I feel like, yeah, the bracha comes through the woman, and I do attribute a lot of that she gives me the space. She lets me, have this time away from the family, for example, to go and learn or to lecture.
Mhm.
And yeah, I see, everything's in the hand of Hashem.
Right,
Everything.
right. I
So
mean,
as
I
long
hope
as
so.
I do my bit, and I see it that I have to really put all my effort into it. I never take that approach of like, well, Hashem will help. Like I just don't look at it like that. I
Right,
look at it like Hashem will help, but I've got to be the one doing the work. And I really make sure that like I can't sleep at night until I come up with a solution. I had this happen just this week where I had a very difficult patient and I wasn't able to get a result. And I'm like really like laying in bed at night, not being able to sleep until I had that aha moment. And I realized, of course, like I could do this.
right,
And I went to work the next day and I did it and it worked. But I wouldn't just like roll over on it. I was like, oh, Hashem will figure it out or Hashem will help or no, I see that's my responsibility. I've got to do that.
right,
Hashem is the one ultimately who gives me that realization. And I'm the one who's got to set it up. I'm the one who's got to get the situation. I'm the one who's got to lay awake at night, not sleeping until I have that aha moment.
right. It goes back to just being open to receive blessings and Shefa. That's awesome. How has sacrifice played a role? I think we kind of touched upon it earlier. There are things that you have to sacrifice. I think even when you want to prioritize religious growth and business growth, there are things within that you sacrifice. So if, you kind of touched upon it a little bit just now of like you had to spend a little bit of extra time away from your family. So to a certain extent, those few minutes is a sacrifice. Those are small sacrifices. Maybe they're a big sacrifice. Are there what are the things that you sacrificed in order to kind of get where you are today? Are there any things that you regret sacrificing?
Wow. I don't know. I've never really thought about that. I'd have to really give that some consideration. What have I sacrificed? I don't honestly, I don't really see it that way. I don't see that I've had to sacrifice. I see
Mhm.
that it's only been I've been moving in a certain direction. What
Interesting.
have I sacrificed? I mean,
Well, saying yes to one thing is saying to no to other things. And I think it's okay to say that the sacrifice that you make is something that you don't care about as much. Like, for example, like for me, like I know that I sacrifice my success in business and like growing a family and growing in the way I want to grow. I sacrifice spending time with friends a lot more than I would if I were getting a job or doing all these things. And that plays. Recently I'm starting to kind of pull back a little bit from that because I think I'm missing something when I'm not being social and being with people I enjoy spending time with. But for sure, for the last 3 or 4 years, there were very few times where like very few times I can probably count the times on my hands like that I had a job to do and I decided instead of doing that job or editing or spending extra time perfecting a video, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends. And that's not like to say that like that was that's the right or wrong decision for everyone. For me, I think it was the right decision. I'd like to say for most, it's probably the right decision. But I'm just giving an example. Like that's something that I personally sacrificed.
right.
And maybe to a certain extent, I regret a little bit of it. In the general decision of sacrificing, of having that a major sacrifice, I don't regret. But I'm wondering if there's anything like that for you.
I mean, I really got to think that over. You're giving me a new idea. I don't really see it that way. It's funny because you have to imagine I'm with people all day
Right.
at work.
Right.
I'm not looking to hang out. It's funny,
Right.
like, I'm very happy to be by myself. I actually really enjoy my own company, and I would rather sit and just and read or hang out with my family. I am really, like, in a weird way, antisocial. I don't actually enjoy just going and hanging out, and I think that's why. I think is I'm just with people all the time. So Shabbos, yeah, like I'll hang out. Like for example, when you guys come over on Shabbos, I'm very happy to hang out, and I'm also happy when I'm by myself. It's that aspect of it. I don't feel as any sacrifice. I
Right.
don't know. I don't know.
You bring up Shabbos. It's a recurring talking point that I think is going to be a recurring talking point throughout the future of the show is the role that Shabbos really plays. And I always say, like, even though I'm very passionate about what I do, Shabbos still plays a huge role. Like, I'm still tired at the end of the week, and I still need, like, even though I enjoy it, it's still exhausting. So, what role does Shabbos play for you? Do you feel like you still need that, even though it's, a break from that, even though you're enjoying it?
Yeah, Absolutely. I think not only Shabbos, but vacation time. This is a
Mhm.
very important part of the working life. And so, yeah, I love my Shabbos. I love my Shabbos. I feel like I have a great kahila that I'm part of. I just like, I love hanging out with those guys. But it's, it's brief. Like I'm
Right,
davening most of the time I'm there. I'm
right,
not part of the Kiddush club, for example.
right.
I never go to the Kiddush club. I'm davening when I'm there, but
Mhm.
I have a chavrusa. So I go an hour and a half before the services start and I learn and I love that time. So it's like yeah, Shabbos to me is beautiful. Family time, relaxing. I always take a nap on Shabbos day. It's like all these things are a really important part of my life. And like I say, vacation. Like I'm going to Eretz Yisrael for the Yantovim,
Mhm.
going to maximize when I'm there. I'm really
Right.
making sure that I have a fun time. I'm setting everything up now, and I feel vacation is the yontif, the vacation, very important part of my working life.
I love that. Um, what are maybe certain things in your like Jewish ideas or Jewish concepts or things that you've learned that you feel like have helped you in your business or business success?
I think one thing is I strive to be very straightforward with the patients.
Okay.
I think that this is something which has really it like characterizes my practice, and I think people appreciate that. Like I'm very realistic about what I can do for the patients, and I never overpromise them. I always underpromise and try to overdeliver. And I see this as a very like Jewish idea of being straight, being self honest, and being honest with them. And I also feel like I have a charitable aspect to my office. I always have one patient who we don't charge. I always have one charity case in the practice at all times, and
Mhm.
I feel like that gives my staff also a very good feeling because they know that that's happening. They know that this particular family is very financially in bad shape, but that their kid really needs the treatment, and we don't charge them or we charge them very little. Like maybe we'll accept their insurance, which is, minimal amount of payment or something like that.
I actually think that's a good example of a sacrifice, perhaps a small one. You might not even see it as a sacrifice. For sure, someone who does not value the idea of charity would look at that as a sacrifice. You are sacrificing a large X amount with hopefully a nice amount of zero signs, zeros at the end of it for a higher prioritization, a higher calling. That you're sacrificing that small, and then, maybe you can even view it as like your own policy of like always having that. How many tens of thousands of dollars over the years could you have made by hypothetically not implementing that policy of being charitable. But for you, first of all, I think as Jews, we do see that, when you give, you get. So, like, when you are charitable, that Hashem gifts you and blesses you tenfold. Even, aside from that, it's just the noble pursuit of saying that there's something greater than just money. There's something greater than just the business. But, we're here on this earth to do good and be good. So I don't know. Maybe you think you still might not even think of that as a sacrifice for you. Because for you, it would just be like, no, this is what you do. I don't even think I'm like losing necessarily. And I think that's
Yeah.
also beautiful.
But you're right. Like I remember one time I was at a conference and it was like a what do you call that? Like a mind group, like a
Okay. Like a focus group type of thing? Like a
focus group, yeah. And I was sitting around with colleagues that do similar work to me, and we were talking about it. And I mentioned this to them, and
yeah.
I thought that they would all do it. I remember thinking to myself, okay, like I was brought it up as like something we all do, and
Right.
they look at me like,
What are you
no,
talking about? That, like, feel like you are losing so much money by not doing this or by
like
doing that rather. But for you, I'm assuming, like, it's just like, yeah, but this is what you do. Like, this is what a Jewish entrepreneur is. This is what it means to infuse godliness into your work, and it's also the acknowledgement that there's things that are deeper and more fulfilling than just what you do, even if you enjoy it, and we learned that from Shabbos, the fact that you need a break despite the fact you can enjoy what you do, but you need a time to kind of reconnect.
yeah.
That's really beautiful. I didn't know that you do that, by the way. That's so cool.
And like I said, also, I feel it's very good for my staff because I have a tremendous team at work
Mhm.
and the team is everything. And I really want them to be aware that this is going on because it gives them a good feeling also to know that this kid, that we're not charging him anything and they have the exact same treatment like everybody else.
Right. I love that. I think that's beautiful. I mean, like, I'm like, I'm gonna think about that more, and I know I'm gonna appreciate it more. Like, on a surface level, like, "Oh, that's such a nice thing," but, like, I know for anyone who really deeply thinks about it. Also for me, I know I've filmed for, with you in your office several times. I know the amount of work and also the amount of overhead that you have. Like that is a big decision, and the fact that you even have that opportunity and flexibility, I think, is huge. We're approaching the end. The last thing I really want to kind of talk about is, or we're gonna revisit a little bit more in the beginning, is your discipline. And you're a very disciplined person. I think most people that I know are not nearly as disciplined as you. I think people my age, on average, are maybe not people not as disciplined as people at your stage in life. What has fueled your discipline? Maybe you can look back at when you really started thinking in a disciplined way. Is it that you're passionate about what you do? Do you think about the goal in mind? What is the fuel for your fire?
It's very interesting what's fueling me. I'll tell you what it is. It's that I feel that I have such a beautiful life that I want to like really maximize. I have like a multi-lifetime perspective, Like I
Hmm.
see that this life is one of many lives that I have lived and I'm going to live. And I feel this one is like so beautiful. I have so much good in this world right now. Like I have a profession that I love and I'm good at it. I have a beautiful family. I live in this amazing community in Teaneck here. It's like I have financially, I feel very stable. I don't feel stressed about money. It's like, and I feel that this opportunity is huge.
Right.
And I
There you
really
go.
want to milk it for everything I can. Like I
Right.
want
Right.
to use every precious second of my life to really take advantage of an unbelievable situation because God knows what's going to be next time. Next time I could be in not such a good situation. I don't know. And I'm not sure how these things work, to tell you the truth. I have no awareness of any kind of mechanism for these things, but I really appreciate the situation I'm in now. And that's what drives me. That's what gets me up early in the morning and makes me meditate every day. And like I reading all of these books, like just trying to soak it up. It's a great situation and I appreciate it so much.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little envious of it. I think that's awesome. I mean, I hope that I can like really maximize my time as much as possible, just doing things that I enjoy. Because I know that there are so many things that I do that just don't. That really, if anything, draw me away sometimes from my ultimate goals. And on that, I think the last question I really have for you is: let's say you're speaking to someone and someone listening to the show, and they feel like their life is void of things that are deeper. They think that they're not maximizing their time. They think that they could be doing more. And not just more, but more things that, as not Viktor Frankl, as Jordan Peterson says, justify your existence. What would you say to someone who feels like they could be doing more, but they just don't know where to start?
It's like a kind of a trite thing to say, but fail to plan to fail. I think that's kind of like a bottom line. Like this is by no accident right next to me. I have always have this book, and this book is filled with lists. And every time I get any free time, I'm consulting my lists and ticking things off my lists. I'm
Hmm.
constantly super like hyper organized, and I'm always planning. And I think that this is like a real, a principle of success. Like you must have a plan. You must, like every year at the beginning of the year, I sit down and sometimes this will take me weeks. I write down a minimum of 350 things that I want to achieve in this year. And there's things that I want to do, things that I want to see, things that I want to become, things that I want to have, like all different categories. And I don't limit myself at all. Like, I wouldn't, for example, limit myself to say, I want to jump up and touch the moon. If that's what comes into my mind, I write that one down as well, even if I don't think it's realistic. Because when I look back and I've kept these books for many, many years. You can see like it has the year on the back, right? So when I look back at the older ones, I see that I had things in there that I thought at the time were unachievable. I would never be able to do that. And now I laugh at myself. Like that I thought that back then because I wouldn't even do that now because it's like, it's so simple. Like, it doesn't mean anything to me now. But yeah, I think that you have to be structured. That's how I run my practice too. We're highly structured in the practice. You have to have a plan. You got to work your plan and you have to take the time like the story of Abraham Lincoln when they say you have two hours to chop down the tree, and he spends the first hour sharpening the axe. Right? You know that story?
Yeah, of course.
So it's like that idea of like make sure you take the time to sharpen your axe and then do the work.
I love that. All right. Rabbi Dr. Andrew Strauss, thank you so much for your time today. For those who are interested in hearing more about what you do and your practice, where should they go?
Well, I have a very developed website. I have a YouTube channel. I have a very developed Instagram. So all these things, I'm sure you just Google Andrew Strauss. Don't just Google Andrew Strauss, interestingly, because Andrew Strauss was the captain of the English cricket team. And if you Google Andrew Strauss, he's the first,
Well, we're
1,000
having him on
pages.
the next show, actually. Next
But you
episode,
say Andrew Strauss scoliosis, Andrew Strauss chiropractor, I think then you would find me.
for sure.
And that's really the way the straussmethod.com is the name of the website. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of information there about what I do.
Awesome. All right. Rabbi Dr. Andrew Strauss, thank you again for the time. Always a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you to everyone listening.
Thank you for the opportunity.